really good? Are you sleeping really good? All right, sleep good. I'm gonna go get the dryer hooked up, okay? So we can wash stuff. Yeah, we can wash our clothes. Yeah. Okay, good night. Well, that should do it. I think we should be able to get a dryer duct with some of that. Well guys, I spent a little bit of time last night reading through the mechanical code, the International Mechanical Code, IMC. If you're a pilot, that's not Instrument Meteorological Conditions. So many acronyms out there. And I also read the dryer brochure in depth. And I'll just say this, it's confusing, but straightforward. Figure that one out. So I spent some time last night acquiring a bunch of this stuff. And then this morning I thought, you know what? Let's get it straight from the horse's mouth. So I actually contacted our local inspector and just asked them, here's how I interpret the code. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we all have, is that a lot of the code is vague. It's good because it allows for creativity, it allows for lots of different ways of achieving the same objective. But for homeowners, it's tough because when we go to a building supply store, or we ask a neighbor or a friend or maybe even a contractor, I'll throw that out there, for advice, we get a million different responses, and some of them will meet code and a lot of them won't. I found something really interesting about the code for dryers. First of all, clothes dryers has its own subsection in the code. Kind of think about that for a minute. I don't think that the code writing bodies just inject code wherever they want. I think that there are specific call-outs for specific things because it's necessary. It's like all those rules apply except for here, this is its own set of rules. And I think that it's easy to mistake a clothes dryer as just an everyday home appliance. But the reality is they have one unique property that makes them particularly dangerous, and that is lint. As far as the PVC vent goes, it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. It's clean, it's easy to clean, it's smooth, there's no joints, there's no screws, it's rigid. The problem is lint. And the plastic has the ability to build up static. And if you've ever been around any kind of ducting or venting or anything, static is just an amazing force. It holds on to dust and lint like nobody's business. That's not really a big deal, except for lint is explosive. If you've ever tried to start a fire and you didn't have anything around, grab some lint out of the dryer and you will have no problem starting your fire. I think one of the most obvious issues would be this guy right here. Let's kind of take a look at what I found at the local hardware store and why this is a major issue. Each of these ducts says dryer vent ducting, flexible dryer vent ducting, etc. Each one of them is aluminum or metallic in nature. But to the untrained eye, if you were at the hardware store, you might see ducting that ironically looks exactly the same, but it's made from a vinyl product. and those ducts are not to be used for dryers. In fact, it'll say, I noticed, not very well labeled, mind you, it'll say not for dryer use, but usually it's small and it's in the corner. It'll say something like for generic ventilation or something along those lines. To add to the confusion, the code says that the transition duct, which is what these are, these go from the dryer itself to the vent. It says that it must be UL listed and labeled. This box says includes UL listed aluminum foil duct. But this box, which is the same exact ducting, does not have any markings other than right there in the corner that it's UL listed. A little confusing. This ducting actually has a UL label on it, which can be seen if you pull it back. There it is, it's hiding. If you see that little blue mark, if we pull that apart, you'll see that there's a UL listing behind there. What's probably not common knowledge, except for those people who are in the building trades, is that UL stands for the Underwriter Laboratories, and they're basically a business that tests materials and creates standards. It just gives some sort of standard to things that probably are just unstandardized. So the Underwriter Laboratories has tested these products, or they claim to have, and they have given them the stamp of approval. The problem is, you'll find a lot of ducting that's aluminum that's rated for dryers, but doesn't have a UL stamp on it. And if you have that, and you're doing new construction, you can't really be mad if the inspector says, hey, that doesn't have a sticker on it. In talking to our local jurisdiction, they just want to make sure that it's not a vinyl ducting. That's really what they're trying to get at. The UL listing, that's kind of something everybody agrees that companies pay for. And I guess that's just an attitude more than a reality. Because without the Underwriter Laboratories, I think there'd be a lot more chaos in construction. There you have it. So this ducting has a big fat sticker on it that says it's UL listed. But what if you don't really want to use this flexible stuff? What if you'd prefer something more like semi-rigid? So I found this ducting, which is referred to as semi-rigid. It actually has enough strength that if you support it on one end, it'll actually stay suspended. The flexible ducting does not, it just kind of gives up. The problem is, this stuff, I cannot find any proof that it's UL listed, and I certainly don't see any markings other than the price tag, which indicate that it's UL labeled. So even though this is metal, it's rated for dryers, technically in the code, this guy won't pass. This kind of brings me to a different subject that we'll probably touch on, well, I know we will touch on a lot more later, and that is the overall ventilation, air quality strategy in the house. The number one thing that I have seen in researching indoor air quality is complaints about leaky ducts. I find it just slightly ironic, if you will, that this ducting is preferred over PVC if we take out the caveat of the lint, which really comes down to cleaning the duct, I think. The problem is this stuff is so far from leak-free, it's a joke. I mean, we're gonna try, we'll do our very best, but let's be honest, a dryer is a huge producer of contaminated air, lots and lots of moisture. And if you had a wood stove and it was really dry in your house and you had to run a humidifier, well, heck, your clothes dryer will do a great job. But in our house, for example, we don't have any combustion heat. So managing the humidity is really important. If you do some research around building science, you'll find a gentleman whose name is Joe Steiberek, I believe his name is. And he talks a lot about ducting and leaky ducting and blaming leaky ducting in attics and walls and things for being a common propagator of poor indoor air quality, which leads to other issues, which we all know about. So I'm just curious if there's got to be a better way. And of course, here I am. I'm not a contractor. We're not engineers or architects. We're just trying to ask better questions and say, how do we use something that can deal with a lint-induced fire in the ductwork, or excuse me, the venting, let's be correct here, but also doesn't pose a risk of injecting a bunch of unwanted moisture into the house? We're going to use some sealing tape and things like that to try to get an airtight seal. We'll have to just see how good we do. I'm a little sad because I put a lot of thought into the unistrut system for mounting the ductwork. If you haven't seen that, check out the last video that we did. I feel like it secures the pipe really well, and it looks nice and clean, and it's a solid installation, so it's going to be fairly strong for the life of the installation. The problem is this pipe doesn't fit. The good news is, according to the inspector and the code, there's zero clearance required around dryer venting. That means that we should be able to put a PVC sleeve around this and still be able to use the unistrut. Before we jump to assembling all this ductwork, which I'm super excited to finally get done, I want to talk about one more confusing thing. If you read the code, it says that around a penetration in a wall, especially a wall that's required to be fire rated, I would think that that's a garage. Let's not hold me to that because we're still learning what that means. It says that when you have a through wall penetration like the one that goes out through the rim board and through the SIP, you have to have a sealant that is non-combustible. Excuse me, you have to have a material that is non-combustible to go around that pipe. The confusing part is there's zero clearance required for the dryer vent. In researching what in the world a fire barrier or a non-combustible sealant is, there's a little bit of confusion. Earlier in the year, we picked up a product for foaming our roof. It's Fire Block. It's a foam polyurethane single part. This is a little deceptive, and I found through some of my research that while this does technically meet the UL, the Underwriter Laboratories rating for a fire block, there's a small caveat. And that is, they did it through modifying the test. So it didn't meet the standard test, it met a modified test. This is really frustrating because I think as builders, we want to try to do this the right way. We don't want to build our house poorly or low quality and regret it later. So I did some more research, and it turns out there are caulking sealants, caulking sealants, whatever you want to call it, that meet the UL classification. And this classification is for fire resistance and smoke resistance. The problem with this product is that it's hard to apply it well into a hole. So I guess if you wanted to, you could just seal the outside of the vent with a material like this to inhibit moisture or air from penetrating. And then according to our local jurisdiction, they're fine if we just put foam around there, since there's a zero clearance requirement. Fight constantly. I don't think there's anything more maddening than this. Such a nightmare. I don't even know if that'll go on there. Nope, it's gonna rip the other one apart. How about that? Doesn't even fit. What a joke. Wow, that's like super fun. Super fun. Yep, that worked about as good as the last time I tried it with foam. Doesn't work. It's pretty good. Well, that didn't go according to plan. That's not at all how I envisioned that duct going. I'm learning a lot. I'm not a huge fan of metal ducting, but I think I'm gonna have to get used to it because I have a hunch we're gonna use quite a bit of it in this house. That's the first dryer duct I've ever built from nothing. And, well, it wasn't very fun. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know what it is about metal ducting. Maybe I just don't know the tricks. Okay, I don't know the tricks. That's it. There's probably something you guys out there know that makes these things just go together like no big deal. Very frustrating. So the code requires support of the pipe every 4 feet. So we've got a support here at the bottom, and 4 feet up is another support. So that's working really good. We are also required to have a clean out access on any vertical pipe. We're gonna call this the clean out access. So we can just remove the dryer duct, and then we could use a cleaning tool to clean this vertical duct. And of course we can pull the cap off outside and clean the horizontal duct. So I think maintaining this ducting is gonna be pretty easy. For now, our dryer has a rear vent. So we're gonna be using this to just run around here. It's basically where that outlet is, which kind of stinks, but is what it is. And we'll use that for now. But there's a feature in the dryer that's gonna come in super handy. Let me show you that. We're gonna end up kind of changing this around when we get it. This dryer has an accessory kit, which we didn't realize we needed to buy. We thought it was included. And it includes the tool to make this a side vent or even down vent. I didn't even know that was possible, but it totally makes sense. So we've ordered that. It's on its way. We'll be moving this vent from this side to actually the other side that we can't see. And that will minimize the amount of bends in the transition venting or the transition ducting. I was reading the 2015 code and they've changed the wording substantially for dryer venting. It used to say in 2012 that you had 35 feet total maximum, and every time you use one of these 90s you have to reduce that length by 5 feet. So in this case we have one here and one there. The transition ducting doesn't count, whatever that means. If you do this, then you're limited to 25 feet. Thankfully, we're under 8 feet here. So very nice setup, pretty straightforward. But in 2015, they changed the wording that says you have a maximum of 18 feet and they allow up to 3 elbows. It's a very interesting wording. So they're saying you can go 18 feet, we'll give you 3 elbows, but you can't go more than 18 feet. So the 35-foot thing is history. I'm guessing there's some explanation of that pertaining to maybe house fire or lint buildup, etc. All right, last thing to do, we got to get a cord put on this thing. Okay, if you can hang out right here and keep it from falling forward. And my hands are just covered in this fire caulking. Yeah. So I think I just need to put a clamp on here and we're done. All right, I'm gonna help it. If you want to try to slide it back gently, gentle stop. So we got to bring the washer out to about there so we don't have a way to keep that from bending too much. Uh-oh. Huh? Ah. Uh-huh. There he is. You tried to sneak out, but you ain't got thumbs, son. Okay, all right, okay. All right, well, have fun. I got the dryer working, by the way. Oh, you don't care? All right, well, see you later. Haha. I think there's stuff inside. Oops. At least it wasn't bugaboo. Well, that sounds good. Guys, dryers these days can tell if your HVAC guy sucks. They have a sensor that must check the load on the motor or something, and it's testing for blockage of the vent. Isn't that crazy? And if it gets a warning, it actually won't run. I guess I can say that's not a bad feature, because if you're not cleaning your dryer duct, you should be, right? Oh yeah. I wonder if we passed. I think that means we win. We win! This may be one of the only games in the world where the high score is 0. Well guys, I think we're ready to do laundry. We haven't done laundry in like a week. But we don't have to leave to do laundry now. Pretty soon here, we're not gonna have to leave the house ever. Well, Amazon's gonna have to deliver groceries before that happens. And I think we're gonna have to get Alyssa some stilts. Or I'm gonna come down and there's gonna be a pile of wash about this high, and then there's gonna be a note. Could you press start on the dryer, please? Not bad. Put a little munch in it right there. But I don't think I've ever seen a dryer duct that didn't have at least one munch in it. Usually you can't even see it. Uh-oh guys, I did make one boo-boo. I think I didn't put this on in the right orientation. Uh-oh. So now our dryer vent louver thingy-majigger is gonna be on crooked. And as usual, I can't get it on there because metal ducting sucks. That'll do. That'll do for now. I have a feeling we'll be revisiting this wonderful device in the future. Probably normal.